Deep Dive with Dr. D. This podcast has one main goal: to help you to see that within you, you have the amazing potential to do great things. Dr. D gives information based on his full life experience, going from the streets to living the amazing life he has today. Hi, everyone. So this talk today is going to be at the request of a follower. I've asked, what topics would you like to hear me talk about? And I've heard people say stories. And, stories are actually a great way to educate and give information to the world. And I like stories too. That can be a good way to capture an audience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my childhood today. My crazy wild ride of a childhood. I say when I start this conversation, I was raised by a single mom, raising four of us in the 60s into the 70s, and then I was the youngest. I would have graduated high school in 1985. And my siblings and I were all 2 years apart. My oldest brother, was born, my only brother. I have four half-brothers. I'll get into that. Alas, Bob was born in 61. My sister Tina was born in 63. My sister Sherry was born in 65, and I was born in 67. So if you just kind of look at the time span from 61 to 85, that's the decades we were raised in. So when I start talking about my story, just keep in mind it was a different time period in society, and why probably we never had CPS show up at our door when probably they should have. Alas, here's what I want to start this with, because I'm going to talk about drugs and alcohol. You guys know, if you follow me, that I'm a person in long-term recovery. In March, I'll celebrate 18 years of recovery. And in my teens and into my adult years, there was a lot of drug and alcohol use. My brother Bob has struggled with his own drug and alcohol use along the way. My sisters, interestingly enough, and this happens in family systems, I remember my sister Tina drinking a bit when she was a teenager, but she never developed a substance use disorder, and same with my sister Sherry. So here you go. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you want to, you can go to my YouTube channel and you can watch the video vlogs of these podcasts. And I have a picture of me when I was a little boy. I don't have a lot of pictures from when I was young. In fact, I don't have really any mementos from my youth. None. And you'll learn why when I talk about my childhood and the fact that we moved. But here's what I want to say about kids. Being a dad now of an adult son and being a grandfather of two boys, 14 and 9. No child ever grows up wanting to become addicted to drugs. No child ever, when they're youth, even in my crazy childhood, okay, when I was young, I have a picture of myself on a Christmas when I got a Tonka truck, right? I remember getting that Tonka truck. And I'm going to tell you, my life during that period was crazy. There was a lot of chaos. Nowhere in that period of my life did I say, yeah, one day I want to grow up and I want to be a drug addict. No child ever really thinks that. So what was my childhood like? Well, we moved. I always say that. We moved. Moving is what we did. Our kind of home base was Washington State, Pierce County, the Tacoma area. I still have family that live in the area. And I love going home to visit. I always say I'll always be a Tacoma boy at heart, always be a city boy at heart. But I can drive around Tacoma and probably easily take you to a dozen or more places easily that I lived in my youth. Like, moving's what we did. When I say moving's what we did, I always like to say, and it wasn't because mom got a promotion or dad was in the military and got transferred. No, that's not the moves we're talking about. These were emergent moves. These were like, oh, we're getting evicted, pack up and move. or my mom running literally from domestic violence scenarios. Our biological fathers, so between the four of us, there are three different biological fathers, and two of them we know for sure were physically abusive to our mother, were verbally abusive to our mother, were sexually abusive to probably our mother, but to my siblings, to myself. When talking about abuse, it was all in there. So when we moved, it wasn't because our parents were experiencing success in life. No, it was because Mom ran out of money. Mom was not good with money, even the little bit of money she had. And I learned at a young age what an eviction notice looked like. I remember going home. We lived in Ocean Shores. I 8 years old-ish, so we're looking at 60, 74, 75, somewhere in that time period. I remember coming home and seeing the eviction notice on our door and knowing at a young age, oh, we're moving. I remember moving, likely an emergent move. I remember Mom would put us all in the front cab of a U-Haul. Again, this is 70s, so, it was probably like, yeah, you don't need a seatbelt, you don't need a car seat, and we just packed all our stuff in a U-Haul. This was normal. I see my wife, I remember when Katrina and I moved in together, and Katrina comes from what I would call a pretty functional family system. A lot of structure, a lot of support. Does her family have stuff? Sure. But they were pretty functional, very different. And here's the story part is I remember when we got our place and we moved in together. And one of the first things her mom and dad did is they brought all her stuff. They brought all her stuff from her childhood. Literally, her parents, we had totes of things from her childhood. My childhood, myself and my siblings, nothing. I remember Mom, when we would do these emergent moves, emergent moves, not healthy moves in the middle of the night. Alas, Mom didn't keep stuff. She probably couldn't, especially when you're running from crazy or you're being evicted. You just have to get moved. So we didn't have, I don't think any of us had any mementos from my childhood. I'm thinking maybe my brother did, but I don't think he did either because he was the oldest and Mom, we always felt like Mom gave him the most attention, the hero in the family system. But I don't think even he has anything from his childhood. So nothing. I don't have any mementos from my childhood. Aside from Mom used to have this bag of pictures. It was kind of in a plastic kind of cheap bag, and it just had a handful of pictures that would go from, I remember seeing that, and then I remember it was gone. But maybe from that, I have this picture from when I was a baby. I have pictures that I've been able to capture on and put on my computer from slideshows that my uncle, her twin, has. But other than that, no mementos. My earliest childhood memory, I was thinking about this today when I was planning for this. My earliest childhood memory is in Tacoma. I remember Mom was with Jerry Emerson, my brother, and my brother's biological father. We were living off of 12th and it'd be Union in Tacoma, Washington. I remember I was going to Franklin Elementary, and I don't remember positive things. I have to be honest. And I have to say this, and I think my siblings have this same thing. I have literal complete periods of my childhood with no memories. And now that I'm an adult and I've learned and I've educated myself, that there's probably a pretty good reason for that. Because of the abuse and the chaos and the trauma and all of that. I have literal swaths of my childhood. I don't remember anything. And I've learned that that's not really normal. I've learned that your brain protects you from remembering certain things. But I remember we were living in Tacoma off of 12th. And it was the one time we had a big dog. I've always been a big dog guy, in part because along the way as kids we had big dogs. Mom was with Jerry Emerson, and I remember it was Christmas time, and Jerry was a drinker. Mom always found men in restaurants and bars because that's where she worked. In fact, a lot of my family either worked in restaurants, have managed restaurants and bars, or have owned restaurants and bars along the way. There's the Hobnob in Tacoma. I'm pretty sure it's my great aunt and great grandmother owned that at one time. My aunt owned a couple restaurants in Tacoma. Alas, Jerry Emerson was a cook, and I don't remember I don't have good memories of him. I remember we had a Christmas tree up in this kind of picture window in this house. I remember it was a single level house, and we went somewhere, and Bruno, our Saint Bernard, that was his window. That's the window he would look out, right? And so we go out to dinner. Who knows what we were doing? But I remember we came home, and mind you, when I tell you these stories, some of it is from my memory and some of it's from what I was told. I think this is a mix of both. But I kind of remember this vaguely. And we came home and the Christmas tree was not in the window. And we went in the house and Bruno that was his window. So he had knocked the tree over accidentally by trying to get in his window. And Jerry, I'll never forget this. Jerry grabbed him by his neck and threw him up against the wall, just slammed him up against the wall. Never forget seeing that. That's one memory I have from that house. I have another memory. I have a couple more memories. We used to, when Mom was with a man, we had Dads of the Week. Mind you, my childhood was Dads of the Week. I say that too. Mom, we think she was married 7 times. That's not counting other short-term committed relationships. It was normal for men to come in and out of our lives, and most of them were not good. These were not healthy, functional men. I'll talk about Johnny Revelle, who was one of the few for me that was a healthy, strong male role model. Outside of him, Mom married, hang on to your seats. Mom married my uncle. Yep, there's some of the family dysfunction. I just let it out. Oh God, the secrets are coming out. It's not a secret, but and he was a nice guy, but it was my uncle. It was really weird. This was my preteen years when this happened. But so I have that memory of that house in Tacoma. I can picture it. There was another experience where we had snuck into Christmas presents. Maybe it was this same year when Jerry abused our dog. He freaking slammed our dog up against the wall in front of us, right? In front of us kids. I was horrified. But we snuck into Christmas presents when Mom wasn't home, right? We unwrapped them to see what it was, and my brother was usually the leader of these efforts because he was the oldest. He was a kid too. And we each opened a present, and my present was this is 70s, early 70s. It was a STP car. I'll never forget it. You would pump it up and then hit a button and it would take off, right? So we opened these presents. Well, we broke it. And so our best decision, my brother's best decision, was to just throw it in the backyard in these raspberry bushes or something that were out behind our house. And Christmas Day comes. This is the story of my life in a nutshell, friends. I was the youngest of 4 in a lot of chaos. And these kind of things were normal to have happen. So we open all the presents on Christmas Day, and Mom goes, we're missing a present, right? And what happens? My siblings blamed me. They're like, oh, David got into it and he broke it. I got blamed. I was the one that got in trouble. We were all involved, but I got in trouble. Another memory from that house. I remember also a time, because I don't have negative feelings toward my brother for some of the things that happened, but because I can only imagine what he experienced. He was like put in our father role in way too many situations. Like we never had babysitters. I should throw that out there. When mom didn't have a man, right? So it was single mom raising four of us. I never remember us having a babysitter. Our babysitter was our oldest brother. And if he took off, then my oldest sister. We were all kids, like literal kids. So I remember this is a weird time. It's always stuck in my brain that my brother, we had neighborhood friends, and my brother forced me to get under a blanket in our backyard with a girl. And I was young. I was really young, and it just was really weird. Yeah, that it was really weird. Those are the memories I have from that house in Tacoma. I have, and my childhood, while it's full of chaos. Oh, I should have said this. If you want to read about my life, if this bores you listening to me, if you want to read about my life, I have written pretty good lengthy blog post, davidadouglas.blogspot.com. Go there, and if you go to months of March, throughout the years that I've had that blog, I have written about my life in the month of March because that's my anniversary month for being a person in recovery. So, Ocean Shores is a place that we lived for a couple, 3 years-ish. I'm not sure exactly. I went to elementary school there, and if I had to guess, second grade, maybe third grade, we were only there for a couple years. But I have some good memories from Ocean Shores. I remember I was free. Like, again, the mom was with Jerry for a little bit at Ocean Shores. There's an A-frame house in Ocean Shores, Washington, still there on Frigate Street. That was the one time that I remember distinctly seeing my mom get hit. Jerry, we slept upstairs in the A-frame, and it wasn't real big, so there were 6 of us, right? Mom and Dad, Jerry, and my siblings and I. And I'll never forget hearing my mom screaming. And it woke me up, and I looked out over the banister, and I saw Jerry hit my mom. I remember that. I said I have positive memories of Ocean Shores, and I do. But that has never left my brain. Yeah. So that was, I don't know how long we lived in the A-frame. I don't know how long Jerry was with us. I know mom left Jerry, went back to Jerry, left Jerry, went back to Jerry. I think the same thing with my biological father. And almost every time it never worked out well. A lot of alcohol, a lot of domestic violence, a lot of dysfunction. But we lived, when mom was single from my memory, most of the time we lived in Ocean Shores. We lived in, that I remember, 2 separate motel, and maybe one was an apartment complex. And so in one, I think it was a motel, and the building's still there. It's apartments now, but I think it was a motel when mom and when we lived there. And I think my mom managed it. Mom did do that. She cleaned the rooms, but she must have been managing because she had a kitchenette. So mom had a kitchenette motel room. My brother and I had our own motel room, just a normal motel room. And my sisters had their own motel room. Now, mind you, we're all kids. And mom worked in the restaurant and in bars. And so when did she go to work? When did she make the most money? At night. So she would leave to go to work. Usually 2-3 o'clock. She was gone, headed to work, and she would be gone. She would be gone until 2-3 in the morning, sometimes later, sometimes coming home alone, drunk, or just coming home and going to sleep. Or, well, I remember very well bringing men home and waking us up. Oh, I want you to meet someone new. And they would bring food. We would like that because we were always hungry. We never had enough food. But imagine motel with all exterior doors. It wasn't a hotel style where you walked in a main door and the rooms were on the inside, facing the inside. No, they were all outside. I think about that now. It's like, wow. That is really scary. Now, going back to the freedom. Us kids, when mom went to work, This was normal. Normal. Mom would leave and put Bob in charge, my brother. And Bob, number one, was a star athlete. He played every sport. I don't know academically how he did. I think he probably did excellent. Bob did everything really well. But Bob also had a pretty strong social life in Ocean Shores in the mid-70s, right? And so Mom would leave to go to work, put him in charge. He was our babysitter. And pretty normal. He would, most of the time, make sure we ate dinner. And then he was gone. He was gone. He would leave. And so then you have my sisters and I to fend for ourselves. So I remember many times just walking around Ocean Shores. A kid. I was 8 or 9 years old. Just walking around, doing whatever. I actually got my picture in the Ocean Shores newspaper. They're somewhere in an archive somewhere. We had Bruno, massive short-haired St. Bernard, and he used to hang out with me most of the time, or my brother, whatever, but I got my picture in the paper because I used to ride him like a horse, literally. That's how big he was. And so there was a reporter that lived in our neighborhood and took my picture with him. But we were alone, friends. We were no adult supervision. Now, you can imagine that probably didn't go well. It usually didn't. There was just a lot of different things happened. I remember one time we got woken up. Mom came home with a man. I remember he had hot food from the restaurant, and he had a TV. Literally, he had a portable black and white TV, and it was the coolest thing ever. And I don't even know if he ever stuck around or not. I don't remember that he did. But normal fare. Mom worked. She probably, most of the time, I always remember Mom was always working. I also have the memory of this same place where we were living in Ocean Shores. Mom had the kitchenette by herself. Me and my brother had our own little motel room I think it was right next door. They were all in the same hallway. It wasn't real big. And then my sister's has theirs. And I'll never forget coming home to ambulances being at our house. And I'll never forget seeing my mom curled up on the couch. I'll never forget this. In the fetal position. Just now knowing what it was, she had a nervous breakdown. She was completely depressed. My mom, I can't imagine what it was like for my mom during this period of her life. And I'll never forget seeing my mom in that shape. But here's what's really interesting is she always bounced back. She didn't have a choice. Family support, my mom, grandma and grandpa Hesselwood, I know they tried. My grandma Turco, I remember she would come visit us. But it was also really hard to track us because we moved so much. I remember I found my biological father when I was 29 years old. So, and I remember being out, and I still, as a dad myself, and how important that role has been for me, because I didn't have a dad growing up. My biological father, when my mom left him, I was born in Cordova, Alaska. I don't remember any of it because she ran from him, literally left him because he put a gun to her head. It was just chaos, right? And so she took us kids. Her ex, Jerry, came and got her, drove up to Alaska. This is 1967, and we moved back to Tacoma again, right? And when I found him, one of the questions that I wanted to know is how could he? How could he just leave me, right? How could you just abandon your son? I never knew my real father. From birth to when I found him, I did an internet search in 1996, did a Google search. Get ready for this. This is early days of the internet. And in fact, it probably wasn't Google. It was probably AOL. Anyway, I found him, and he was living 40 miles away I was in Tacoma and he lived in Bremerton. I'll never forget the phone call. I called him. He owned that, yep, you're my son, I'm your dad. We met, right? But the point of this story is I was like, how could you? How could you just abandon me? How could you just leave me? And I gave him this much. He says, I lost track of you guys. He says, I owned it. I gave up. But it was hard to track us. And that kind of goes back to mom having family support, right? Her parents, it was hard to track us. This is pre-internet, friends. This is way before cell phones. So we would move so much that I gave my biological father that much in that, I can understand just based on how much we moved and how frequently we moved, that it would be hard to keep up. So from Ocean Shores, we moved back to Tacoma, or we might have moved to Portland. We lived in Portland for probably less than a year. I remember the guy mom was with. She moved there because of a guy. From what I'm told from my siblings, and I think mom, he was a cop, which was really odd that my mom dated someone outside of a restaurant. I don't know where she met him. Maybe at Ocean Shores. Maybe he was vacating. Anyway, I remember this. This is kind of a funny one. I remember him being a good guy in that he would take us to ice cream. But here we go. This is a funny story. And so I don't know. Again, I'm young. I'll never forget going to the drive-in. He had an El Camino, right? Cool car. And mom, we all went to the drive-in. And we're all young. Guess what movie mom thought it was in her best decision making? Mom thought it would be okay to take kids to see. You ready? The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, I'm not kidding one bit. I probably had nightmares for weeks after that. It was crazy. But we lived in Portland for a short period of time, and that's really all I remember about Portland. Back to Tacoma, I remember living with our grandmother for a short period of time in a house that's off of 6th Avenue. And then mom had rented a house from a family friend. And I've been going pretty long for this, so I might wrap this up here shortly. And this maybe will be a to be continued. But I remember moving into this house. It's still there. It's on 64th Street off of 64th and Parkland in Tacoma. I have positive memories. I remember having friends in the neighborhood. I remember going to school. And I remember mom meeting Johnny. Johnny Revelle was renting this house. The garage had been converted to its own little apartment style thing, and Johnny was living there. Now, it's probably not going to surprise you that mom met Johnny, Johnny met mom, and mom's like, hey, let's get together. And they did. And mom and Johnny married. And for me, I have a picture of their wedding day, and I don't know why I was crying, but I was upset for some reason. I don't know. Maybe mom made me comb my hair. Who knows? But Johnny, for me, from that point previous, it was all chaos. I never had a positive male role model. It just wasn't in the cards for me until Johnny came into my life. Johnny Revelle came into my life and mentored me in a way that still has a positive effect on my life to this very day. He, for me, was the one of the many men that came through our home, came through my mom's lives, who took a positive vested interest in me. I always like to say he actually gave a shit. He wasn't just in it like mom. I can only imagine. Imagine being a man. And again, this isn't judgment on anything, but you go out on the town, you meet this lady at a bar, you drink it up, and she's like, hey, you want to come home with me? Of course, yeah, let's go home. Alcohol-infused craziness. And then you go, and then you wake up the next morning, and 4 kids come in, right? It's like, it probably scared a lot of guys away. Probably good for us, because my mom's picker was broken. But Johnny we didn't scare him. He wrapped his arms around us in a hugely positive way. So we moved again, and even with Johnny, we didn't have as many moves, but we still moved. You should know that, obviously, you probably know this, with a single mom raising four of us, super, super low income. Mom worked her butt off, 1, 2, sometimes probably 3 jobs, and we still, I remember going to food banks. I remember the first of the month being when we would have food, and then by the end of the month or even before, not having food. So alas, I remember with Johnny, we had a lot more structure. We had more stable living, but there was still some financial struggles. But we moved to Arizona. And I'm gonna tell the story of Arizona, and then I'm gonna wrap this one up, because I want to end this as much of a positive note as I can. So we moved to Arizona. We moved to Phoenix first. I remember the place we had in Phoenix. It was an apartment, and it felt good. There was structure. It was good. And then we moved to Casa Grande. We lived in a trailer park, but we had a double wide, which was a big deal for low income. And life was good. I have lots of positive memories from Casa Grande. I remember that was the first time for me in my life where I really felt like I was able to be a kid. I have so many positive memories of summers and just enjoying summer. I honestly don't remember a lot about school during that time period, but I know I was in school. It felt like a family. And I said I was going to end this on a positive note, so I'll try to do it. But the reality is it might be difficult, because it wasn't in the cards for Johnny to be in my life for the duration. Because Johnny had an accident. He worked and he drove heavy equipment. And the bits and pieces that I remember, he had a work accident, and then the cancer diagnosis came. And I remember us moving from Casa Grande back to Tacoma. I'm guessing to be closer to family. I don't know the exact reason why, but we moved just a couple doors up from a longtime family friend on 61st in Tacoma. And by this time, I was in 7th grade. I remember that. I was at Stewart Junior High, which is now Stewart Middle School on Pacific Avenue. And, I knew Johnny was sick. He was in the hospital. And I'm pretty sure I knew he had cancer. And I remember it was toward the end of the school year that I got the call to come to the office, and they said, "You need to go home. Your mom called." And Johnny died, and he was, I believe he was 41 or 43 years old when he passed. And for me, I'm 12 or 13 at this time. It was a really, really heavy weight to bear. I was up, obviously all of the emotions. And I wish I could say that my mom, made some healthy decisions after that, but she didn't. I love my mother, her memory of her. But within 6 months, my mom remarried, and this is where it got weird, and this is where I just said, I'm done trying. My mom married my uncle. Yeah, it's about as weird as it sounds. And then all of a sudden, now all of my siblings had moved out, because we moved back to Tacoma. And then all of a sudden, my 2 cousins, who I really didn't know, they were kind of like we'd never really hung out or anything. All of a sudden, I got 2 stepbrothers / cousins that moved in. And Kenny, who was a year older than me, he was already on a juvenile delinquent track. He was skipping school, smoking cigarettes, smoking pot, drinking. And I went, that's where I'm going, because I was done trying. So I said I was going to end this on a positive note. Here's what I want to tell you. What I want to tell you is that I share this trauma with you, as crazy as this sounds, to give you hope. One, if you're a parent of a child and you have dysfunction, you can make the decision to turn things around for yourself and for the trajectory of your child's life. You can do that. I'm an example of someone who has done that myself for my son, and my son has done it for his sons. And what we've done in our lives through healing and counseling and education is we've literally broken generational cycles. Generational cycles of addiction, generational cycles of trauma, generational cycles of dysfunction. And so if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I want you to know that you can make a change. You can tap into the resources to get education on being a good parent. Go to classes with your child to learn how to be a healthy family. If you struggle with drugs and alcohol, you can access resources to get help to turn your life around. I hope you've enjoyed this talk. I hope you have a great day. Love to all. As always, thanks for listening. Episodes are released twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. You can also follow me on my other social media channels in the description.